What can be more important than justice? More important than justice? At least mercy to people, especially to innocent children who have been killed by shells. Children like the 2-year-old Zahra Guliyeva, who died in July 2017. It happened during the mortar and grenade attack of civilians in the village of Alkhanli in the Fizuli region of Azerbaijan. At that tragic moment, a little girl making first steps in her life was peacefully walking with her grandmother in the front garden. Another Azerbaijani boy, a 9-year-old Fariz Badalov from the Agdam region, was killed in March 2011. The bullet hit the child when he was playing in the yard of his house. In April 2016, a whole family with kids in the car was killed by an artillery strike on the Terter region. Different children born in different frontline villages of Azerbaijan didn't know that they would meet the same tragic fate, that their joyful childhood will be too short, that they were sentenced to death by national chauvinists obsessed by their greed for land. Since 1988, when the Armenian armed forces occupied 20% of Azerbaijani territories, statistics of such tragedies in Azerbaijan have been growing. About 100 years ago, Robert Scotland Liddell, a British war reporter who had been in the Caucasus during the First World War, wrote in his article, "War with the Muslims, Armenians attack again." Armenia incurs great hatred by fighting against innocent peasants for the sake of its overwhelming greed for land. In 1919, a reporter from the Fugi Albion couldn't even imagine that the bloody massacre of peaceful Azerbaijanis would continue even in the third millennium. And the overwhelming greed for land of the extremist wing of the Armenians will be quenched by children's blood. The end of the children's life who have been killed in their homes on their land is truly a monstrous humanitarian catastrophe, at least because every child is a lost, taken away and torn apart heritage of their own nation. Do not shoot at our heritage. Every soldier who has been killed is also a part of this heritage, a destroyed part of the nation's gene pool. How many people around the world should unite in order to stop the Armenian aggressors with the appeal, "Do not shoot your people. Don't throw away the lives of young soldiers by getting them involved in massacres to capture foreign territories." To stop this barbarism and madness, the first vice president of Azerbaijan, Mehriban Aliyeva, appealed to Armenian mothers. Do not let your sons become victims of occupation policy. Do not support the occupation policy. This must be stopped. The conflict must be resolved within the framework of international norms and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. The occupying forces must leave Azerbaijan, and the peace will be restored in the region. And no mother, be it Azerbaijani or Armenian, will shed tears at her son's grave. According to the United Nations data, 758,000 Azerbaijanis have become victims of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and have been subjected to ethnic cleansing. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan stands for peaceful resolution of the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, provided the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan is recognized and 20% of occupied territory is released. After all, to stop hating once and forever is the only constructive approach to establish peace in the South Caucasus and stop the bloodshed. One shouldn't assess the conflict situation from who is a winner and who is a loser standpoint. Let justice win. This is the only prospect of peace in the South Caucasus. Let the adherents of war be shattered by the onrush of the acts of humanism and peace initiatives. In addition, time is bearing down on us because the unceasing murders of civilians in the frontline villages of Azerbaijan and the deaths of soldiers on either side every day exacerbate the humanitarian situation. Every young people die whose lives were too short to be able to love and rejoice. Azerbaijani soldiers die for liberation of the occupation territories of their motherland. But Armenian soldiers die becoming victims of territorial claims. The Armenian authorities deprive them for their right to live in order to retain the occupied Azerbaijani lands. And this has been continuing for 30 years. To find new ways for the reconciliation and take steps to heal the bloody wounds of the war. The activists of the civil society institutions of Azerbaijan and Armenia, for the first time in the long history of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, have come to a dialogue based on the principles of humanism and peaceful coexistence. We cannot and should not forget the tragic events that left the deepest wound in our hearts. However, as a peace platform, we appeal to the civil society of Armenia to continue our joint peacekeeping activities in order to eliminate the consequences of this confrontation and destruction of the enemy's image and to seek internal peaceful resources. We are confident that peacekeeping is the inheritance of most courageous and brave men for whom human life is the highest existing value on earth, says the peace platform. Fortunately, sensible minds of the Armenian public immediately reacted to the peacekeeping appeal of the platform. I believe that the time has come for us to become good friends with our neighbors so that we could help each other if necessary, support each other and start creating, not destroying. Civilized dialogue begins with the recognition of nations' historical heritage. Not denying the heritage of Armenian people. As a whole, we simply remind that the Armenians from the time immemorial were mainly localized in the territory of Asia Minor, and until the beginning of the 20th century, Armenia did not exist in the Caucasus. The matter is that the territory currently occupied by the Republic of Armenia belonged to Oghuz Turks and ancestors of Azerbaijanis since ancient times, although in the 4041, when under permission of Jahan Shah, the leader of the Karakunlu Oghuz Turkic monarchy, the throne of the Armenian Church was transferred from Cilicia to this territory. Armenians practically did not live there, and the ancestors of modern Azerbaijanis were the titular nation of these territories. Together with the throne, the Armenian Church exported the name Echmiadzin to the South Caucasus. According to the legend, at the beginning of the 4th century, Gregory the Illuminator built a small wooden church, Echmiadzin, in the city of Vagarshaphat, in memory of the Christian girls who were executed by order of King Tiridates III, the persecutor of the Christians. But judge for yourselves. Tiridates III was the king of Big Armenia, located in the interfluve of the Euphrates and Murat rivers. It was in that area where these events took place. Therefore, the ancient Vagarshaphat and Echmiadzin were located on the territory of modern Turkey, but not in the South Caucasus, where the Republic Armenia is now located. This is about Vagar-Shapat in Asia Minor, which according to Festos Buzant, the 5th century Armenian historian, was destroyed by the Persian in 452. But 1,000 years later, in the 5th century, the Armenian church revived toponym Vagar-Shapat and Echmiadzin, lost in ruins, already in the territory belonging to Azerbaijani Kara-Koyunlu monarchy. Thus, the notion of the ancient Armenia located on the ancient Turkic lands of the South Caucasus was falsified. In this regard, let us refer to the travel notes of Baron Fyodor Korf, the prominent Russian novelist and publicist who visited Yerevan in the 1840s. Some writers think that Yerevan is the city that Ptolemy calls Turva. Nevertheless, we shouldn't think that Chardin, who believed that Yerevan was an ancient Vagar-Shapat, only because Echmiadzin was built there. If to trust the Arzanov's publications about history of the Armenian kingdom and Saint Martin's statements, Echmiadzin is more than 15 versts away from Yerevan. But it's hard to imagine that Vagar-Shapat was so spread out. The process of acquiring lands by the Armenians from the Azerbaijani landowners during the rule of Kara-Koyunlu and Akh-Koyunlu monarchies is described in Persian documents of Matandaran, Jacob Papazian's 3-volume collection. Based on archival materials, Papazian underlines that most of the documents proves absolute domination of the Muslims ruling class in large land ownership. Here's one of them, Hoja Fatih Bey from Ordubat, a descendant of Hoja Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, the famous scientist, astrologer, mathematician, and statesman, had big land lots in the villages of Drnis and Tanakert, located in Vanan Gofti, Azad Jiran County. It is probable that these lots of Fatih Bey, or some of them, were bought by the Armenian Hojas in the 17th century and given as a mortmain property to the Apostle Thomas Monastery in Agulis. Please note, the oldest of the Armenian property, deeds regarding Matandaran, dates back to 1305 and belongs to the Armenian monastery on the island of Lima in Lake Van. This territory has nothing to do with the South Caucasus. This proves unlikelihood of the Armenian presence in Transcaucasus in early 14th century. It is interesting in this context to refer to the statement of Thomas de Waal, the British expert of the Caucasus, mentioned in his book Black Garden, Armenia and Azerbaijan Through Peace and War. Referring to William Ellery Curtis, the traveling correspondent, de Waal writes, Yerevan became the Armenians' capital almost by default. Many Armenians regard Van as their capital city. Curtis was referring to the city in Turkish Armenia to the south of Yerevan. Armenian historians claim that the first Armenian state allegedly appeared in the Caucasian historical arena in the 6th century before Christ. Meanwhile, famous academician Mishaninov in his book Aldology, or the History of the Ancient Van, states that the ethnonym Armenian is identical to the Urartian Arame, who was the ruler of the conquered Assyrian country of Arame, the indigenous region of Urartu. The name Arame is mentioned in the chronicle of the Assyrian king Shalmaneser III, who ruled in 858 till 824 before Christ. That is, this name actually existed in the South Caucasus long before the 6th century before Christ, and there are no any grounds whatsoever to ascribe it to the Armenians who settled in these lands later. The Armenians persistently call the Urartians their ancestor, trying to substantiate their claims of being autochthonous among the Caucasian people. Meanwhile, Petrovsky and such world's leading experts on Urartu like Diakonov, Mesheninov, Melikashvili proved the kinship of the Eurasian language with the languages of the northeastern Caucasus, in a sense, Chechen and English languages, with the exception of some words borrowed by the ancestors of Armenians. The language of the Eurasian inscriptions is not in any kinship with the Armenian language, which belongs to a completely different Indo-European language family. Among thousands of victims of war, truth and justice are the first and foremost victims, since the message of this film is to call for justice and peace. We are trying to reveal the truth that is hidden in the depths of history and never perishes. Its value and essence is not to make people fight with each other, but to warn nations against making mistakes that lead to humanitarian disasters. Falsifying the historical facts and manipulating them puts the current world order under huge risk. Using forgery and falsification of historical events, the Armenian people are being taken out of the real world. And this is being done quite successfully. My fellow Armenians, I'm confident that together we will find the truth, and we will find those who deceive us.
Ermənilər bu ərazidə 19-cu əsrin ortalarında məskunlaşıblar. 20-ci əsrin əvvəllərinə təsadüf edən Çar Rusiyasının xəritələrinə baxsanız görəcəksiniz ki, Ermənistanın bugünkü ərazisinin bütün şəhərlərinin və kəndlərinin, bütün toponimlərinin mütləq əksəriyyətinin adları öz mənşəyini Azərbaycan dilindən götürüb. Rusiya imperiyasının süqutundan sonra 1918-ci ildə ilk Azərbaycan Demokratik Respublikası yaradılmışdır. Bu respublikanın qəbul etdiyi ilk fərmanlardan biri Yerevanı Azərbaycandan Ermənistana vermək oldu. Ermənistanın bugünkü paytaxtı 20-ci əsrin əvvəlində əhalisinin 80%-ni Azərbaycanlılar təşkil edən bizim tarixi Yerevan şəhərimizdir. Bugün bu şəhər tamamilə etnik təmizləməyə məruz qalıb.
The Goy Mosque, Blue Mosque, and the Shakharskaya Mosque or Zalkhan were located in the Shakhar or Old Town. The Tepebashinskaya Mosque was located in the Tepebashi quarter at the Haji Novruz Alibek. Haji Jafar and Demirbulakskaya mosques were located in the Demirbulak quarter, quartered at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. In essence, before the formation of the Armenian Republic in the Caucasus. The same mosques are listed in the Register of State and Public Buildings of 1906 till 1911. We would like to believe that the sensible minds of the Armenian society respect the symbols of humanity, such as religious shrines. However, the aggressive paranoia of the political elite of Armenia led to the destruction of almost all the mosques of the medieval Azerbaijani Yerevan. Meanwhile, notes of the European travelers, testimonies of Russian scientists, and public figures help revive the history of Yerevan, which earned the fame of the city of minarets. Frédéric Dubois de Montpérix, the French geologist and archaeologist, visited Yerevan in 1833, and his 6-volume work Travel Around the Caucasus, published in Paris. He described in detail the Yerevan fortress and the Goy Mosque. His drawings of the main entrance to the Sardar Mosque and the building of the Goy Mosque show the monumental stature of these structures. In his fundamental research called A Historical Monument of the State of the Armenia Region, in the epoch of its annexion to the Russian Empire, published in 1852, Ivan Chopin, famous Russian historian, points out the following in the mosques section of chapter 10. 2 mosques are located in the Yerevan fortress. One of them has been turned into an arsenal and the other into a shop. There are following mosques outside the fortress: Zali Khan, Novruz Alibek, Sarten Khan, Hussein Ali Khan, Haji Imam Verdiev, Haji Jafar Bek, and the ruins of the rest 4 mosques. German explorer Augustus Gatzgausen, who visited Yerevan in 1843, reports that one of the fortress mosques, the Raja Pasha Mosque, was turned into a Greek-Russian church, and the other, the Sardar Mosque, was turned into an arsenal. You can see the domes of those mosques in Roubaud's painting Surrender of Yerevan Fortress in 1827. Countess Praskovia Uvarova, famous Russian archaeologist, visited Yerevan in 1880 and described the main dome of the Sardar Mosque and its columns, emphasizing that they were decorated with colored glass bricks and magnificent ornaments. This mosque impressed Dubois de Montpérix, who reflected the beauty of this Muslim shrine in his painting, The Mosque of the Yerevan Fortress. In the writings of travelers and explorers, this mosque, located in the Yerevan Fortress near the Sardar Palace, was mentioned as Sardar and Abbas Mirza. In 1911, on behalf of the Imperial Archaeological Commission, Professor Nicholas Marr inspected the Sardar Palace in Yerevan and also described the condition of the Sardar Mosque, which was the part of the palace complex. The mosque is still in good condition, but everything tends to bring it to the state of the Sardar Palace. Meanwhile, this is the most precious heritage of the local Muslim culture. Inside the dome, in a circle, there is a wide belt of Arabic inscription, a carpet-like painting over mihrab that looks very stylish. The dome has a crack that could have been fixed a long time ago. This is the year of 1916. The Sardar Mosque in Yerevan has not yet been destroyed. There were still 2 years left before the Armenian political expansion into the primordially Azerbaijani land of the ancient Oghuz Turks, which today is called the Republic of Armenia. In 1918, the Dashnaks locked and burned alive several hundred Azerbaijanis in this mosque. And this is the year of 2007. There are only the mourning ruined remains of this mosque in the independent Republic of Armenia. And this is the year of 2010. It was the place where the Yerevan fortress was located. In the early 1960s, the Sardar Mosque was razed to the ground so it couldn't remind of Azerbaijanis, the true owners of this land. The mosque you saw in Duba de Mamparic's drawings and Ruba painting, surrender of Yerevan fortress in 1927, stood right here, and only a fragment of the wall is left from that masterpiece of architecture. These are the ruins of a 17th century mosque in Agarak, and these are the ruins of a mosque in Loribert. Local residents go there and light candles, believing that this is a ruined church, hence the stone at the entrance with a cross. But these are the ruins of a mosque. The other in Zorakert village in the Shirak region, 19th-20th centuries, are in the same deplorable condition. The travelers were also amazed by the Shakharskaya or Zalkhan Mosque that was wiped off the face of the earth almost 90 years ago. Henry Lynch, the famous British traveler, described this mosque in his book dedicated to his travel to Yerevan, published in London in 1901. Thanks to this book, we know that the mosque was constructed in 1687. This date was carved on its facade. The beauty of the mosque resembled that of the Blue Mosque, and it was located in the very center of Yerevan, on the territory that is called the Republic Square now. In 1928, this Muslim shrine was razed to the ground. Among all mosques, only the Blue Mosque was not demolished in Yerevan. It was saved thanks to the efforts of Yegishe Charents, the famous Armenian poet, who called it the Blue Diamond of Yerevan. At present time, it is restored at the funds of the Iranians who work in Armenia, where this mosque is deliberately presented as Persian, not Azerbaijani mosque, contrary to historical truth. To find the truth, let's refer to Tatevos Akopian, the Armenian historian and the author of the book History of Yerevan, 1801-1879, published in Yerevan in 1959. Referring to Havanes Shakhatunyan's, the bishop of the Echmiadzin church, Akopian wrote, "An inspiration with the name Hussein Ali Khan and the date of completion of construction is carved on the southern side of the Blue Mosque. It is not a coincidence that Ivan Chopin called the Blue Mosque as Hussein Ali Khanskaya, because this mosque was built by Hussein Ali Khan from Yerevan, who was the Azerbaijani from the Qajar dynasty and Persian crown prince of Turkic origin. The Shiite mosque in Yerevan is in a good condition. They call it Persian, while everyone understands that this is an Azerbaijani mosque. How can there be a Persian mosque in Yerevan, in the Turkic Yerevan Khanate? Of course, it is the Azerbaijani mosque." Thomas de Waal notes that the Armenians could erase the Azerbaijani mosque inside their capital city was made easier by linguistic sleight of a hand. The Azerbaijanis of Armenia can be easily written out of history because the name Azerbaijani was not in usage before the 20th century, and these people were generally referred to as Tatars, Turks, or simply Muslims. Yet, they were neither Persians nor Turks. They were Turkic, speaking Shiite subject of Safavid dynasty of the Persian Empire. In other words, the ancestors of people whom we would now call Azerbaijanis. So when the Armenians refer to the Persian mosque in Yerevan, that name obscures the fact that the most of the worshippers there, when it was built in 1760s, would have been in effect Azerbaijanis. The fate of the Demirbulakska Mosque, which was the only functioning mosque in Soviet Armenia, was also tragic. It was that mosque Thomas de Waal was looking for in Yerevan. Yerevan has many secrets. One of them lay behind a tall apartment block at number 22 Vardanant Street, not far from the central city square. I was pretty sure that here had been a mosque used by Yerevan's Azerbaijanis. It had the misfortune not to be classified as Persian and was demolished. At the foot of the steps, there sat an old woman in floral dress. "Was there ever mosque up there?" I asked her. "Yes, there had been." "What happened to it?" "We didn't touch it till the last day after they destroyed the Armenian church in Baku." "But why did they knock it down?" "Why leave it? We are Christian, they are Muslims. When there were problems with Azerbaijan, our Armenians came and destroyed it in 3 days." The old woman in floral dress was wrong. Here it is, the Armenian church in Baku, preserved in its original form, protecting by the states as a religion Christian shrine. It stands in the very center of the capital of Azerbaijan, a country where 20% of its territory is occupied by Armenia. And this is a clear evidence of high tolerance of the Azerbaijani people. The main thing in the relations of people, societies, and states is not to enter into darkness, so that everyone can see each other and strive for a dialogue. Do not shoot at our heritage. Shoot at the darkness that puts an obstacle to restoring mutual understanding. Our strong desire for peace will change the world around us.